since 1966.
This is NBC4's News Conference with Conan Nolan, Southern California's longest-running public affairs program.
On this edition of News Conference, it's become the new reality of life in Southern California, the effort to not share your air. But is it working? Did we reopen too soon? And were opportunities missed in the early stages that could have led to a better result? We talk with LA County Supervisors Kathryn Barger and Sheila Kuehl about that, and a decision by the board to ask voters to permanently set aside hundreds of millions of dollars in tax money for social programs in disadvantaged communities. Plus, two Californians, Congresswoman Karen Bass and Senator Kamala Harris, are being considered as potential running mates for Joe Biden. Who will he choose? We talk with Bob Schramm, a former presidential campaign manager. He's now the co-director of the USC Center for the Political Future. And among the industries being hammered in the COVID-19 crisis, manufacturing. But now many companies have tried to stay alive by switching their assembly lines to help with the making of protective equipment for restaurants, offices, and small businesses. We talk with Lance Hastings, president of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. Good morning and welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal City. I'm Conan Nolan. Hope you are safe and well as we continue to social distance and conduct our interviews by FaceTime, Zoom, as well as Skype. With us now is the chairwoman of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, the Honorable Kathryn Barger, whose 5th district includes northern Los Angeles County, including Pasadena, Chatsworth, Santa Clarita, Palmdale, and Lancaster. So, Supervisor, COVID-19 is still the issue of the day, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, you were the only member of the board to vote against asking voters in November if the county should permanently lock away 10% of its unrestricted budget for social programs such as mental health outreach, jail diversion, and job training in underprivileged neighborhoods. That money could not ever be used for law enforcement going forward. You oppose that effort. Why?
Well, first of all, this charter amendment is going to permanently tie the hands of the board and the CEO for future budget issues. And quite frankly, all those categories that you just identified where this money would go, we're already funding. This is truly an effort to defund law enforcement. And quite frankly, I've said it's not an either or, it has to be an and. We should be investing in our communities, which we are doing, but we shouldn't saddle future generations with a 10% mandate off the top. It's ridiculous. And there's even a question as whether it's even legal based on the California Budget Act that really does not allow us to even do this.
Sheriff Alex Villanueva has condemned this measure, saying it's a thinly veiled attempt to cut the sheriff's budget. Do you agree?
Well, I disagree that it's thinly veiled. It's right out there. I mean, I think that my colleagues have been very open with the fact that $360 million is going to be moved from law enforcement into the community. And I can tell you, when you look at crime going up, there are people out there, even in the communities, that are saying they want more resources going into their community, that are going to say, where's my public safety? Where am I being protected? And the answer is going to be, they're not there.
Your colleague Hilda Solis says, what's the problem with putting this before voters? It's letting them decide. It's called direct democracy.
And I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that if it were legal. There are concerns about the legality of doing this. Again, that was brought up by our county council, and I don't have a problem putting things before the voters. But first of all, it was not done with a public hearing. People were not allowed to weigh in terms of their concerns from the public. This was done very quickly, and I truly do believe that it does not meet the standards of the California Budget Act, and I think it's going to be challenged.
Turning to the COVID-19 crisis, did we reopen too early?
Absolutely not. I think that the mistake that I believe was made was that we let our guard down. And I know that the whole issue as it relates to masks has come up as a political issue. Masks protect you and they protect me. We need to continue to use the mask. We need to continue to practice social distancing, but we also need to continue to recognize that this virus is still in the community. And if we practice all that is being told by public health, we can maintain the fact that we've slowed the spread and keep our community safe.
Hindsight's 2020, but is there anything you regret as to how the county has handled this pandemic?
Gosh, that is a good question. And obviously, I always look back and question. I mean, I think that for me, early on, when we had to do the safer at home and doing a better job of the narrative in terms of what it meant to go from safer at home to safer in the community and safer at work, I wish we had done a better narrative to warn people that just because we're saying you can now move forward and we can open up some businesses, it doesn't mean that you let your guard down. And I think people let their guard down. In addition, I still say to this day, my frustration is double standards. On one hand, we're telling, churches they cannot have services, but yet we are promoting the protests that were taking place. And there was no public health order enforcement at many of these protests where there were hundreds of people congregating without masks. And so I think that also, looking back, I wish we had a stronger voice as a board as it relates to the fact that this also was compromising public health.
Kathryn Barger, Chair of the LA County Board of Supervisors, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Be safe.
With us now, also a member of the County Board of Supervisors for Los Angeles, the Honorable Sheila Kuehl, whose district includes West LA, Beverly Hills, and much of the San Fernando Valley, including North Hollywood and Northridge. So, Supervisor, thanks for coming. Let me ask you what I just asked your colleague. When it comes to COVID-19, did we reopen too early?
I think in hindsight that we did, but I think what it betrayed was a certain amount of optimism. We saw the numbers flattening out, and we decided that we would follow whatever Gavin said because we thought it was better to have consistency with our sister counties all around us, on the borders. And I think the optimism was we thought everybody would obey the rules, and it just turned out they didn't. People were pouring into the bars, they were pouring into the gyms, they were just not wearing masks. They were all over the beach and not separating themselves. So we had to say, okay, pause. Let's roll back a little bit, though. As you know, we never went all the way back to everybody stay at home. And we're starting to see better numbers now. And although we just found out that we're not getting good numbers from the state at the moment about our cases, so we're having to collect them for ourselves. But I think if we take it slower, we can keep the businesses open the way we have with, outdoor seating and bringing things to you, if everybody just obeys the rules.
There were some high-profile examples of super spreader events, such as the house party in the Beverly Crest neighborhood of Mulholland. Hundreds of people without masks, no social distancing. There was a murder there as well. There was also a wedding in Holmby Hills that had to be broken up. Both, I believe, are in your district. Can we assume you support Mayor Garcetti's plan to allow LADWP to cut off power and water to homes where those kind of activities are taking place?
I love the idea. I really do. I think one of the most difficult things, though, is not necessarily just about homes where we might be able to do something, but like the bar in Hollywood that opened up for a private party for LA Sheriff Department folks, and they're already closed. So we're working with the Alcohol and Beverage Commission to see if they do it again, take their license away. And that, I think, is key, is to find our partners like the city in everything we can do to tell people there are consequences.
You and three of your colleagues voted to put on the ballot a measure that would require the county to spend at least 10% of its unrestricted budget on social programs for communities in need. That's hundreds of millions of dollars each year, which by law could not be used for law enforcement. Was this an effort to codify into the charter the defunding of the Sheriff's Department?
Honestly, it has nothing to do with the Sheriff's Department. I'm glad you asked me so I could clear it up. And I don't know why the sheriff's been going around saying his budget's going to be cut. There's nothing in this measure about taking money away. Let me take a minute to explain the budget. Since I've been there the last 5 years, the budget averages about $32 to $36 billion a year. 3/4 of that comes from the feds and the state. So we're not talking about that money at all. 1/4 of it is locally generated. About 40% of the unrestricted funds go to not just the sheriff, but the sheriff, the DA, the public defender, the alternate public defender, the jail, and the jail, medical services. And that's about 40% of that 25%. The other 60% we allocate any way we want. And this measure says, how about we take 10% of that, not necessarily sheriff or DA, and spend it on things that really work instead of putting people in jail, like mental health services, like substance abuse services, like helping them find a job, like affordable housing or helping homeless people. It's not incredibly big a deal.
Kathryn Barger, moments ago, your colleague questioned the legality of this measure, that there wasn't a public hearing.
We had 3 public hearings. Not exactly sure Kathryn's been a great chair, and you can see she's really stressed, and I can see why, speaking of COVID and all the stuff we've had to do. And she was not happy to be on the losing end of this vote 3 times in a row. So remember, we had 3 public hearings about it. All this measure says is, would you like us to, in the long term, fund alternatives to incarceration? And if so, can we just take this little bitty part of the discretionary money, which is only a quarter of the whole budget anyway, and divert it to people who need it in the communities, in the hopes that they won't commit crimes, in the hopes that they can get better in terms of their mental health and substance abuse. This is not unvetted. This came from community and organizations. They did polling on it before they even brought it to us. And I think that, when you ask people to vote on something, that definitely is the biggest vetting of all.
Supervisor Sheila Kuehl of the District 3, LA County, thanks for taking the time.
Conan, thank you so much. I appreciate seeing you again. Long time.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have you back in person. We'd love to do in-person interviews. That would be nice.
Cannot wait. I'm just saying. Thank you very much for doing this. Take care.
Up next, 2 Californians now in Joe Biden's vice presidential sweepstakes when we return.